guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, Hannah Can Cook. Today we are going to be making another special recipe. This recipe is normally baked by my dad a lot, and so that's what makes this recipe special. We actually found it in a special cookbook that is used for bread, so I will put a link down below of where we found that recipe. But without further ado, let's introduce our recipe. Today we're going to be making one of my favorites, bagels. These are made from scratch, and yes. Okay, so the process of doing these bagels is about a 2-day process. And so I started with the first part of the process of this bagel making video, and I just filmed it last night. Alright guys, so today we're going to be starting out with the first part of the bagel recipe, which is called the sponge. Now, this part of the recipe is very important because it helps create fermentation, and this fermentation helps enhance the flavors, and it just makes the bagel taste like that bagel that you are familiar with.
For this recipe, you'll need 4 cups of bread flour, 1 teaspoon of instant yeast, and 2.5 cups of water at room temperature.
Bread flour is very important in making the bagels because it has a high gluten content, which means it contains a lot of protein. And this high protein allows the bagel to become chewy and have a really good crust on the outside, makes it hard, but then it makes it soft on the inside. Alright, so now we're going to be adding all of these ingredients into the mixing bowl, so let's get going. Alright, now I've got to just cover it up. You can use saran wrap, or you can use a damp cloth, whatever you want, and let it rise for 2 hours. Two hours have passed, and this sponge has doubled in size. So after those 2 hours have gone by, you want to make sure that your sponge has doubled in size.
For the dough part of the recipe, you'll need 1/2 teaspoon of instant yeast, 3 3/4 cups of bread flour, 2 3/4 teaspoons of salt, and 1 tablespoon of light or dark malt syrup. Okay, so to start the dough portion of the sponge, you add in the yeast, and you add it to the sponge, and then you put it on a low mixing speed, and then you add the salt and some of the flour, and then you mix it up again on a low speed, but make sure it's low because you don't want more flour getting all over the place. And then you add in the tablespoon of the malt syrup. We actually have barley syrup, but as long as it's malt, to give it flavor. And then we mixed it up again. And then we added the rest of the flour. And then we mixed it up. And then we mixed it for about 6 minutes or until the KitchenAid can't mix it anymore. And then I put it on the counter. And then I had to start kneading it for about 10 minutes or more, at least 10 minutes. When I'm also kneading the dough, I also like to put flour on the surface just to help prevent the dough from sticking. And I even like to add water just to moisten the dough because you don't want it to be dry, you want it to be moist. And then you can even have a family member help you knead your dough because after a while your hands get really fatigued and tired. And then after you've been kneading it for about 10 minutes, you can try the window pane test. And basically you stretch the dough up to a light, and if you can see the light within the dough, then you know that you've developed enough gluten, and then you can stop kneading it. And then I like to use a glass bowl and spray some cooking spray in the bowl. So then when you add the dough to it, it won't stick when you have to pull it back out again. And then I also like to put the cooking spray on the saran wrap. And so you can just wrap it up and then put it in your fridge for about overnight. Or another night, we actually usually like to split the dough in half. And so do half one day and half the other day.
Alright, so it has been about 1 to 2 days, and here we have our bagel dough. And so I pulled it out of the fridge, and then you have to let it sit for about 2 hours or more just to get the dough warmed up, about more to room temperature so that it can be able to be shaped. So without further ado, let's get on to shaping this.
So to prepare the shape, I like to put down wax paper and put non-stick cooking spray on it so they won't stick when you try to pull them up. And then we have a scale, and so we just took all of the dough that we had and put it on the scale, and then from there we divided it into 8 because we were making 8 with this batch. And then I measured them exactly to the weight for each one, so they're all equally weighted. And then we have 2 ways. You can bring your fingers in the middle and pull out like that to make a circle, or this one is prettier. You can use time to roll it out until it's long, and then you can wrap it within each other like a twist kind of. It helps hold its shape better if you do it the second way. And then I just add it to the wax paper. And then once you have all of your bagels that you're making for that day on your wax paper, then you have to let it rise for about 15 minutes. You don't have to cover it up, just leave it there. And so while that's doing that, I'm going to be putting on the oven to about a high heat so it can boil. And then I added a tablespoon of baking soda and a tablespoon of more of that barley malt. And then I just used a wooden spoon to stir it up. And then while that's doing that, I added some cream of wheat to my baking stone, or you can use a tray if you don't have a baking stone, just to prevent the bagels from sticking when you pull them out of the oven. And then I added some paper towels to a separate tray right next to where the water will be boiling. And then once that water becomes to a boil and your bagels are done setting for 15 minutes, rising, you just put it in to the boiling thing, and you put it in for a minute, and then you can flip it. If you want them to be more chewy, you can do a minute and a half on each side, but I personally like a minute just because I like less chewy bagels. And so you can either do one, or you can also do multiple bagels, and then you can just set it right next to your paper towels. And then once you have them on the paper towels, we just take another paper towel and just like wet them down so that they can get a little bit dry and get rid of the excess water that's on them from when they are boiling. And then we transfer them to the tray that has the cream of wheat on it. Add salt. And then we like to add Assaggio cheese. You can add whatever you like. And then you put the oven on at 450 degrees, and you can bake for 12 minutes, and every 6 minutes you rotate it. And then I like to put on cream cheese. You can also put butter on. But yeah, that's the bagel. Tastes really good. Make it for your friends or family and just enjoy.